White Americans are obsessed with discovering our ancestry because we are yearning to understand where we come from. When we arrived in America, our job was no longer to be Greek or French or German or whatever. Our job was to be white and embark on the project of whiteness, right? The problem, of course, besides the violence, is that a mere 2 to 3 generations later, we're so hungry to figure out where we come from because whiteness is rootless. It's too new and it hasn't really done anything good for the world. We crave roots that have more nourishment. But I'm going to tell you now why the search for your European ancestors is always going to be fruitless and futile, and also why it's going to be okay anyway. I think it's an invitation for something even better. Like other people facing the rootless wonder that is European American existence, I sent off a sample of my DNA to a private company to tell me who I am. I knew the basics of my heritage in the sense that I knew my birth certificate said French, Welsh, Portuguese, and German. That's all I knew. 23andMe finished analyzing my data and they said, yeah, that all checks out. And also, did you know you're 12% Sardinian? No? I make some calls. No one in my family has any record of this, right? I become completely obsessed with Sardinia for 2 weeks. I am looking up Sardinian history. I'm looking up Sardinian culture. I am planning a $2,000 trip to Sardinia so I can go and try that like freaky worm cheese they have. For a reason I can't yet articulate, I know that being from this place makes me a more interesting person. And I log in one day to show someone and poof, it is just gone. They took all my little Sardinian Pokemon DNA points and put them into Portugal. Like the whole thing was just some kind of rounding error. And I was very upset about this. I felt betrayed. And then I was like, I just let a private for-profit company tell me a story about myself that I can never verify, that you can never verify unless you have a fucking time machine, and used it to change my entire perception about who I am. The whole exercise revealed itself to be what it truly was, which is useless. You go looking for your ancestors not because you are looking for blood purity. You're looking for stories. Blood will never tell you a story. You put a story on blood. You find out your part whatever, and you tell yourself a story about what that means about you based on stereotypes you've heard about that culture from other people. That is not the same thing as learning about what your ancestors were like. Were they kind neighbors? Were they loving parents? Were they cruel to strangers? What did they think of immigrants? What did they think was happening when they prayed? Did they ever think about you? You just don't get to know that with a DNA test. That will only ever be a story you make up in your head that you allow a DNA test to give you permission to indulge. And there is a freedom in this. Actually, stay with me. I think most of us want to be burdened with a legacy. We want destiny and direction that is so certain and so strong, we might actually have the gall, the bratty urge to fight it. DNA tests don't give us legacy. The freedom of America that was promised to European settlers can be realized by us, the descendants of those settlers, but perhaps not in the way that it was originally set out. I feel like a wandering white ghost. I think a lot of us do. But we are still the inheritors of incredible wealth and incredible things were built for us. We are ghosts holding bags of money and power. We need to realize that looking backward is only going to get us so far. We need to look forward. Maybe our ancestral legacy is the realization of the benefits of rootlessness, that we are part of a global family, and that it is our obligation to care about that. That is our evolution. We know how easy it is to be torn away from a bloodline, removed from a cultural and a national identity, and reformed into something new that doesn't fully understand itself and the consequences of that. Because borders always change. Nations always change, and cultures are always in a state of change. If you wrap your self-perception up too much in these things, these changing things, you lose the plot of what ancestry is about. Ancestry is the search for family, for belonging. You already are a part of a family, even if it's a dysfunctional one. Care about.
You see, white people don't want to be white anymore. And the crazy part is, they are tired of the burden of their violent ancestral legacy. Some of these white people that are coming in, understanding their true history, apart from what they were told, they don't want to be white anymore. They don't want to associate with whiteness in as much as they're white, like their skin biologically, but they don't want to associate with anything that comes with owning a white skin. Brothers and sisters, in this video, you are going to see instances of what we call cognitive dissonance or cognitive dissonance. This is a situation where a white person is caught in a dilemma of accepting the realities of their history and also understanding the devastating effects that it left some people. Even though they didn't conduct all these things, but the devastating effects of whiteness or just holding the white skin haunts them. And some of them are not proud of where their ancestry came from and the legacy that their ancestry led. Because many white people who study history for the first time, that slavery, that colonialism, lynching, segregation, genocide of indigenous people, experience of what we call ancestral shame. They feel confronted by the fact that their racial category they belong was constructed through domination and violence. Psychologically, this generates a psychological activity or phenomenon called cognitive dissonance. How can I see myself as a good human being when my ancestors built a system of brutality? Rather than confronting confronting this history honestly, some try to escape the discomfort by rejecting the ideas of whiteness altogether. And this is a situation that we are going to watch. We are going to see white people come out and talk about all these scenarios. So brothers and sisters, stay tuned. As you know, I'm your host and presenter Agent Stories. I'm your number one host and presenter Agent Stories. And if you're watching me for the first time, I'm asking you to please subscribe to the channel, join the membership, and really get to work out for you. So let's get into it. I'll be back and I'll be sharing my thoughts in regards to these cognitive dissonance that we are seeing right here. So let's keep watching. I'll be back.
About that.
Oh, what is going on? Where's the energy of your ancestors? Those were some violent ass people, and y'all, I'm not seeing that energy. I'm not saying you should be like that. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that energy, that commitment, that passion, I'm not saying it. Y'all gonna let these bald, raggedy ass white men in the White House tear y'all ass up like this? You gonna let them mollywop y'all's ass like this? What happened to conquering continents? I'm not saying you should do that. That wasn't it. But that energy, like, where is it? Y'all think deconstructing racism means you lose that dog in you? No. Y'all gonna go out like this? What happened to we're the supreme race? What happened to that energy? It wasn't true. And we know that. But at least y'all tried. All I'm saying is y'all are losing recipes. It ain't gotta be the same recipe, but you can switch out some ingredients.
Is it weird? No, weird is the wrong word. Is it fucked up that white people from this country have taken every fucking tradition and turned it on its fucking head? I just watched a video about Memorial Day actually being an African American holiday. It was never a white person's holiday. African Americans made it a holiday. I shared the video. Go see it. Go look at it. Every day I learn how insidious my heritage and others is in reality. The spectrum of greed that flows through our blood in history past is just astounding. Wake up and do your research.
This is 7,000 years old. White skin. Yep, my skin color is only 7,000 years old, and we know this through the markers in our own DNA. We know when white skin evolved. Because Homo sapiens, us, we all originated in East Africa. And then when the globe started warming up after the Ice Age, we started roaming across the entire planet, and eventually, after 100,000 years, our dark skin turned white. Which kind of puts things into perspective. Why do we have racism? We are still just one species of people, and the amount of sunlight one country gets means that the skin colour will be different to protect the skin. Darker skin in hotter climates, whiter skin in colder climates. There's no difference in the human being that's underneath that skin. And I just think racism is so redundant, and I'd love to see an end of it, because it's just so stupid. We shouldn't be divvying up people anyway, and especially not for something as so ridiculous as people's skin colour. We are one race of people, and this is kind of a new addition.
Lived in America for like 20 years, who has come to understand the history in this country specifically. A little bit, understand a little bit, not a lot, so don't come for me. Why do white people get defensive when they're called racist, when they did racist things, when they had microaggressions that were racist? Why do they get defensive when in their blood from their ancestors is racism? Mind you, there is no class where they can learn to see people as people. There is no class where they can learn what their people did and see how it has affected them, so that they can unlearn those types of things. So in 2025, when a woman is saying microaggression in their songs, and we're like, that's right, it's giving racist, you're like, oh no, that's not what she meant. How would you know when you can't even confront your own racism? How would you know? When that man who got unalived on TV was repeating whatever, but then proceeded to be racist, it's like, oh no, you're taking it out of context. You telling me we're taking this human out of context not once, 10, 20 times? When y'all decided to put that human in office, who was point blank racist, y'all were like, oh no, cheaper grocery, oh no, he doesn't mean it that way. The man, when the whole racism ended, he was 17. And according to some research, when he had his hotels and stuff, he treated a certain type of way. So I am confused why white people get bent backwards when they're called racist. Why? Do you ever stop and be like, oh wow, that was racist? Oh wow, am I racist? I am. But why? Oh, it comes from my, oh. Let me unlearn that. It's that simple. The first step to overcoming something, white people, is to admit that you are racist. The majority of you are racist. And if you're not, you do racist shit. And when your friends tell you, hey, that was racist, instead of you getting defensive and be like, no, that's not what I meant, then what did you mean? And if you can't explain what you meant, or you make excuses for what you did, just be like, you know what, that was racist, and I need to really dig deep and unlearn. It's that simple. Y'all need to stop acting that way. Y'all have never taken a class to unlearn your racism. So what do you think is gonna happen if your ancestors do things that try to cover up all the shit that they did and how they acted so racist, and you don't know, now you acting like you know? Y'all stupid. Go learn some. And better yet, learn that you are racist and unlearn it. It's okay. No one's mad at you, but we are mad at you when you act dance and I'm like, I love it.
It's so funny when white people say like they face a lot of racism. It's really racist in China and Japan and Korea. What racism did you face? Did someone not invite you to a party? Did someone look at you differently and called you a name? Did you lose your job? Did you get in trouble with the police and were sent to prison for life? Did they take away your children? Did you get killed? Did your family get killed? Because that's the level of racism people face in US and other countries. That's the level. So keep these comments to yourself because you make non-racist white people look bad, real bad.
I used to believe that white people couldn't be spiritual until I realized that the vast majority of them were spiritual until they severed ties with their ancestors in spiritual practices in order to gain access to the concept of whiteness. The creation of whiteness as a racial category required the spiritual and cultural castration of the diverse European people it encompassed. To become white, they had to sever their connection with their specific cultural ancestors, folkways, and spiritual traditions, replacing them with a hollow identity based solely on racial supremacy and aligned with state-approved religion. The rise of centralized nation states and state-sponsored Christianity required the suppression of local pagan and folk spiritual practices. Celtic tradition, Nordic mythology, Slavic folk magic, countless others were systematically demonized, outlawed, and driven underground by church and state authority. It was a spiritual colonization within Europe. When these groups came to America, they were already partially disconnected from their roots. But to be a proper American meant they had to shed the remnants of their old country superstitions and embrace a more standard Anglo-Protestant identity. The mantra was to forget the old world and its ways and reinvent yourself in the new world as an American. This meant abandoning the collective ancestral identity of the past. Whiteness as a concept has no ancestors. It's ahistorical and offers an identity based on what you are instead of who you came from. They had to trade their ancestors for a racial category. The path to whiteness was to accept assimilation, abandoning native languages, adopting Anglo names, leaving their distinct religious practices behind, and actively distancing themselves from Black and Indigenous people to prove that they deserved the wage of whiteness, all to gain access to a bland and homogenized racial category. Yikes. And this is why the concept of white pride is inherently racist. Because you aren't white. You were never white. You abandoned everything you are and everything you came from to be a part of a supremacist group in order to have power over other groups of people. And when you know that, you know that there can be no such thing as white pride. You had an identity. You gave it up for false power. Now we all live in a system of capitalism, consumerism that benefits none of us.
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. Now, one of the psychological problems is that whiteness has no culture. It was constructed only as a hierarchy. Being white does not give you food. Being white does not give you music. Being white does not give you spirituality. Being white does not give you tradition. And what does it grant you? It only grants you privilege. So, when white people realize their racial identity is not built on beauty, but on power over others, it creates a hollow feeling. My identity is nothing but dominance. And that's why you see all these white folks are coming out and talking about these issues. And so I think it's imperative that you get to see that in that line, get to see that in that way. That makes that makes them feel emotionally uncomfortable, understanding their history and where they came from and the life that their ancestors led. That emptiness makes them emotionally uncomfortable, and they attempt to associate from the label to avoid facing the moral meaning of it. Also, the guilt defense cycle, and this is a psychological phenomenon that happens to them because they try to escape accountability, right? So some white people reject whiteness because they do not want to carry the psychological weight of responsibility. The guilt is so much heavy, and instead of transforming that guilt into accountability, they attempt a psychological maneuver. The psychological maneuver is, I'm not like those white people. I'm not part of whiteness. This becomes a defense mechanism, a way of avoiding the emotions that comes with understanding systemic racism. Instead of really addressing racism, they deny their membership in the category, benefiting from it. What they do is they deny. They deny all these things that they benefit from. They'll come and say that I'm not enjoying no privilege that used to be there before. They'll deny and deny and deny and deny this. Why do they deny this? They deny this because the fear of collective judgment. Now, in multiracial spaces, especially online, where we have many white people who feel judged simply for being white. Yeah, they feel judged for being white. They may feel that acknowledging whiteness makes them part of a group associated with oppression, ignorance, or cruelty at the same time. And you know what this creates in their mind? This creates what we call identity anxiety. And all these white folks that you've seen who are talking on this video, they are going through what we called identity anxiety, where they fear being blamed for historical and ongoing injustices. Now, rejecting whiteness becomes a way to protect their ego from social criticism. If I say I'm not white, then no one can attack me for whiteness. It's by default. So, rejecting whiteness becomes a way of protecting their ego from social criticism, right? There's also a moral injury. Feeling contaminated by a racial identity. We need to talk about this, brothers. So some white people experience something psychologists call moral injury. And what is moral injury? Moral injury is the feeling of being morally strained by associating with wrongdoing. They look at their ancestors' action and feel emotionally contaminated. And it's true, it happens because of guilt at the same time. My identity comes from people who enslaved, who colonized, and committed atrocities. These internal conflicts create shame. It creates sadness. It creates even anger. Instead of processing it, some flee from whiteness because it feels like wearing a symbol of guilt. It's generally guilt, and it's full of guilt. We need to talk about something. Talking about the fear of losing relevance and power. Another psychological level, some white people don't reject whiteness because of guilt. You know why? Because of fear. They see whiteness losing demographic. They see whiteness losing cultural. They see whites losing political dominance in America and generally Europe. Now, the decline of the majority population creates a feeling of vulnerability, because if whiteness is no longer powerful, what does it even mean for those individuals? Rejecting whiteness is not moral. It is a defensive reaction to avoid experiencing the anxiety of decline. Whiteness feels like a sinking ship, so they want to jump off. That's how they operate. Also, another thing that I would like to talk about is the crisis of identity in a post-supremacy era. Remember, at the end of it all, whiteness was engineered at the top of the racial hierarchy. But now, that society is challenging that hierarchy. Whiteness enters a crisis. It was never meant to be equal. It was never meant to dominate. So when modern societies tell white people, you are just another group like everyone else, they don't know who they are anymore. Some respond by embracing white nationalism. Others respond by rejecting whiteness entirely. Both reactions comes from same psychological root. Whiteness was never built to survive equality. Without power, without superiority, whiteness feels empty, shameful, or meaningless. So, some try to distance themselves from it. And that's how it has always been. So, brothers and sisters, please let me know what you think and feel about this video. I'm your host and present Edge Stories. But until then, let me see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.